Hello there, Chilluminati listeners. Before we get to today's episode, give me a moment and let me tell you all about today's sponsor, Beard Brand. You can find out what style best suits you at beardbrand.com/chill. You see, Beard Brand isn't like other beard companies. In fact, it's not all about beards at all. In fact, there are plenty of other products for skin, hair, and beards. This isn't about being more masculine or being the roughest, toughest guy around. It's all about fostering your confidence through grooming. Whether you have a mustache, a goatee, or the full-on beard like myself, Beard Brand has something for you. They encourage us men to be better versions of ourselves, and taking care of your beard is part of that. No need to change who you are, only help you express yourself through great grooming. Maybe you don't have a beard. Don't worry, Beard Brand has you covered, with plenty of product for your skin and hair over at beardbrand.com/chill. Heck, I've been using the sea salt spray for my hair to give it that windswept look you constantly see me with, and it smells damn great at the same time. Beard Brand is all about education and community while fostering self-confidence through grooming. Again, you can find out what works out best for you at beardbrand.com/chill. That's beardbrand.com/chill, beardbrand.com/CHILL. Now, on to the show. Jump in then, as we always do. Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Chilluminati podcast, episode 17. Today, and next episode, we will be diving back into the world of true crime. I'm excited to. It's been since the Tommy Patera trilogy, since we've touched true crime, and one of our most listened to batch of episodes by a large margin. People loved the Tommy Patera stuff. Apparently...
Whoa. More than the talk of Alex and Space Beetles or whatever the hell you guys come up with
that rides the bus around town.
Listen, the Jeff the Mongoose one was great.
My gossipy mongoose isn't as popular as this awesome crime.
We stand in a place of privilege to say none of our episodes really do poorly. All of them do really well. The Tommy Patera stuff, however, does particularly well because I think he's still alive and. The facts are my memory's a little cloudy because I remember reading it a while ago, but Tommy, the whole Bonanno crime family killed somebody relatively recently.
I heard about this.
They're still around, they're still doing things, and they murdered somebody a couple months back.
To which I say, hey guys, looking good. You're all sharp dressers, all of you, every last one of you.
Exactly.
Oh
you all
man,
look great.
Such a cool guys. That Tommy was a piece of shit though, right?
Yeah. He was
I have no opinion either way. Hopefully it doesn't affect you.
Can't believe he did that to the Bonannos like that.
Oh,
remember,
right.
No. He stayed loyal to the Bonannos in prison. He never ratted out anybody.
Which is why I have no opinion.
Neither do I.
But... You know what it is? I think it's the macabre. I think people just want to hear about brutal murders.
Well, I think that's what's honest to God, you're right. Like, we're a horror podcast overall, right? We do a lot of weird shit. We talk about all the weird things, but real life horror is scarier than anything fake or perceived as fake. And people just, horror is just a lot of fun. I am a self-admitted kind of just fan of the psychology of serial killers, and it really interests me. But that brings us to today. But before we worry about any of that, we got a few things we have to talk about. One, a lot of this research came from a book called Fatal by Harold Schechter. Great book. Phenomenal book. It talks all about the Jane Toppan. However, Jane will be reserved for the next episode. But also, I want to give a personal shout out and thank you to our two volunteer researchers that helped tremendously on this episode. Deanna Davis and Nathan Leonard. I sincerely appreciate it. You'll be hearing those names.
We know their credentials? Do we know who these people are?
Yes, I have their credentials and everything. I know I'm just saying. Who
are these people? These are vetted sources.
Vetted sources.
Sources?
Yeah, well, in a way.
Oh my god, they were there.
They
were
there.
the killers.
Yeah. But you'll be seeing or hearing those names and maybe a few others over the course of however long we end up doing this. It's just been very nice to have other people be able to help
Oh
me
my
sift
god,
through.
is this going to be like on Coast to Coast AM when they have the people call in for the first 30 minutes and it's like our old friend of the show, Lisa, the star lady, and she's like, the stars are in good position tonight, George. Are these going to be...
Not
I'm
quite
down
like
for it.
that.
I'm ready.
They're just they help me go through a lot of the garbage stuff that I have to read and sift through good and bad. And
The number 8 is in your astrological sign tonight.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Oh my god.
Do you know that they changed the fucking... What are those? The Zodiacs? Did you hear about this?
Did they change them?
They did it a while
you-
ago.
Yeah, like NASA published something and it officially changes everyone's zodiac a little bit. Like I'm according to them, I went from being a Cancer to a Leo or something like that.
Congrats.
Well, once a Taurus, always a Taurus.
I was gonna say, I'm a
Mine does not
Taurus.
change.
Or no,
Yeah.
I'm a Gemini now.
I think
what
that
it
means you and I are not supposed to mix well.
But is that your new zodiac or is that your old zodiac?
I don't friggin' know. I was a Taurus.
See?
I was always a Taurus.
Yeah,
But we're
April
not-
20 to May 21 is Taurus.
All right, I'm
That's
still
the
always
thing.
a Taurus.
That's the thing though, is if it changed and people are still like, oh my god, that's totally me. It means the whole thing's bullshit. Because the
exactly.
other time everybody was wrong.
What? Are you saying that horoscopes are fake and just generalizations meant to make you believe that you're both an introvert and extrovert? You're an introverted extrovert.
I believe in a higher knowledge, Jesse.
that would make me an extroverted introvert, right? Because of
You
what we
know,
do for
you
a
know,
living.
you know what I believe?
Yeah.
I believe that I'm a Taurus, and so is Dwayne Johnson, George Clooney, Megan Fox, and Queen Elizabeth II. So please, and
me
thank you very much.
And me and Dwayne The Rock Johnson have the same birthday, so that makes
And I have
me
the same
as
Myers-Briggs as Tyrion Lannister, so...
Exactly. Well, you know what's not fake, gentlemen? Serial killers. It's a good
That's
time.
true.
That's a good segue, right?
Yeah,
All right,
this
let's dive in.
this is actually an episode I'll be like, this happened. This
Yeah,
is real.
this all happened.
I believe this.
I
It's
believe
fucked up,
this.
but I believe it.
So, the first question I want to ask you boys is when you guys think of serial killers, don't look at the notes because I wrote examples, obviously. But when you think of serial killers, who do you or do you mostly think of when the word serial killer comes to mind?
Literally, I picture like a dude in a white shirt and a mustache.
Right?
Yeah.
You don't have to give me names.
A beautiful person.
A beautiful person.
Like especially a man, like a very attractive man, because it's easier for them to lure in people when they're like,
You're thinking what's his name, right? Ted Bundy or whoever. Who's the hot one?
Yeah, Ted Bundy was a hot one. Jeffrey
Yeah.
Dahmer wasn't even that bad of a looking guy for his
But
time.
Dahmer, I think of him because he ate people.
He one day we'll tackle those big boys, but we're not gonna get there quite yet.
And what's the clown guy?
John Wayne Gacy's the clown.
Yeah. He's like the archetype, or the guy from that show on Netflix, Mine Hunters or whatever.
Oh yeah, I actually haven't seen
The
it.
co-ed,
yet,
the co-ed
the
killer.
co-ed killer. Yeah.
But you always
He's
think
like-
of something like American Psycho or Dexter, like the guy who's very clean cut and very precise, and is like, what I do because I must, like that kind of weird shit. Yeah.
And literally clean. They're clean.
Yep.
Not just clean cut, but like
Right.
meticulous.
Yeah, like John Wayne Gacy's house, as an example, was immaculate, pretty good looking, but under the floorboards of his house is where he kept all the bodies. But exactly, what you guys said is males, mostly middle-aged, maybe a little younger, but they're always in adulthood. Likely suspects that you guys all mentioned: Jeffrey Dahmer, Ted Bundy, John Wayne Gacy, and these all happened in the period between the 60s and the 80s, and news cycles were dominated by these people, making them big names and big entertainment pieces.
The classics,
Yeah,
the hits.
Exactly.
Sure.
Top 40 serial killers.
Yeah, serial killers were in a
Rocking it
weird...
all night long. Top 40 serial killers.
Is this a serial killer radio show?
Coming at you live on the serial killer charts, number 5. John Wayne Gacy.
Oh my God! What's up? Nothing, man. I killed a guy. How you doing?
Oh my God, is this our favorite color, John Wayne Gacy?
It's me. What's up? I killed somebody.
What's up?
Me too. Cool.
Serial killers back then, and still are to a lesser degree, obviously, a weird fascination. And to some people, myself included, it still kind of stays that way. They're very fascinating psychological profiles to delve into and kind of figure out.
Undeniably, the
they're
morbid
just-
curiosity is overwhelming. in cases like that.
Exactly. So when I ask you, what do you guys, when I ask about female serial killers, does anybody come to mind?
Charlize Theron.
So Aileen Wuornos.
What?
Yeah,
What?
yeah, in the movie Monster.
Yeah.
And that is it.
And
yeah.
that is literally
Lizzie
it.
Borden. Lizzie Borden's the only one I can think of.
Oh yeah.
Because
was
the
she?
rhyme, right?
Yeah, and she wasn't a serial killer, though, was she? She just had
I guess you're right.
She had what do you call a killing spree in the moment?
Yeah, all right. I guess you're right. Yeah, you never really think of female serial killers because it's usually guys.
Yep, exactly.
Weird. Men just love to kill shit.
Well, that's when you said Aileen Wuornos, it's exactly it, right? Aileen Wuornos, was a late stage serial killer. In 1989 is when she started doing her crimes, which would make sense too. That's who you think of because she was dubbed after her arrest the first female serial killer. That's what every book, every
really
TV
true,
show
though, right?
really marketed her as the way to sell things. And she was brutal and showed all the signs of her male counterparts, clearly killed for the thrill and the sexual urge that it gave her, the sexual thrill it gave her. Very messy, was more of a, but very much like a gun to the head kind of shot. She didn't torture her victims as much as she just put them out.
Who is the woman who was it the Angel of Death? The person
Angel
who
of Death?
The
Yep.
person who would go around and like kill people in the hospital because she's like, I'm putting them out of their misery. Who was that?
We're going to get to her in the next
Really?
episode. Jane Toppan is the Angel of
Yeah.
Death. Devil in disguise, Angel of Death. That is her nickname. But before we get to Jane Toppan, we're going to talk a little bit about serial killing in the late 1860s.
What?
And specifically a female serial killer that operated before Jane Toppan did, who killed in a very similar way.
Interesting.
So let me pull you boys back. Time machine time. We're going far away.
All right, hold on.
Perfect. If you guys had a visual, you would just see Jesse and Alex making fingers at the camera. That's all.
No, they would have seen the camera going wavy as we traveled back to the 1860s, and now it's black and white.
Now you hear the
and it would have been tight.
You hear the clopping of horse, the chattering of people on the streets, bells as doors open and close. Welcome to a post-Civil War America. A time where the Industrial Revolution had been rolling for a while now, and the USA was catapulting itself into a proper world power that it would eventually become as we know it. Where machinery and mankind's drive work hand in hand to push itself further, in a time where medicine was still working out some kinks.
Burning wood to make you feel better.
Yeah. As an example, let's talk about arsenic in this particular time period. Something that we're going to get very, very familiar with over the course of these two episodes. An over-the-counter purchase at the time that it was sold and used for a sort of cure-all. Remember, there was no FDA during this time.
I just don't even understand how it's like right now, nowadays, we know arsenic to be like, it's
fucking a poison that kills you from
literally
the
it's a
inside out.
deadly poison, the worst poison, like
Yeah.
a poison that this is like a comedy, almost like a trope when you're gonna poison somebody. Arsenic.
Yeah.
How did it ever get used for anything? Like when you give it to somebody to fix them, aren't they just like, and then they die? Like what happened?
I mean, more or less. It's exactly what that's exactly what it was. It was a poison. However, back then it was used for multi-purpose things. People would use arsenic for rat poison. Obviously, you could just buy it and poison, a rat problem.
That's a solid use of arsenic.
But you could also find arsenic in common beauty products.
Well,
As an example, one known as Bella Vita arsenic beauty tablets. Tablets, where taking the tablet was claimed to eliminate pimples, blotches, freckles, sunburn, discolorizations, eczema, blackheads, roughness, redness, and to restore the bloom of youth to faded faces.
all right, let's be clear.
Correct.
Just before we start mocking these people for their insane use of things that are dangerous,
Yes.
people inject Botox into their face. Like, Botox is the thing we do now.
Yeah, but this is like I'm of the understanding that when you eat arsenic, then you die, right? Like
We're gonna
what happens.
Yep, and usually what it is, and we're going to talk about the amount that it usually takes to kill somebody.
I see.
Understand that they putting in those beauty tablets. Granted, there was arsenic in them, but never the amount that one tablet would kill you.
Let's also point out that, just for those of you at home, Google old ad for cocaine.
Oh,
And just like the things that pop up are like cocaine toothache drops, instantaneous cure, 15 cents. registered 1885. Like, this is just in the past, things are a little different. That's all we're saying.
This is going to be multiple stories, today's story and next story, of a mix of uneducation, like being uneducated in the top and knowing what arsenic really does, and all these things that, like Jesse, cocaine and morphine, all this stuff was over the counter. There was just not any knowledge or full knowledge as to what it does. People basically knew it made you feel better, so it's good for you. Take it. However, there's going to be a mix of that and a bunch of just incompetence at play as well that allowed these people to get away with what they did for as long as they did. However, like I said, the beauty tablets, arsenic in general is incredibly cheap to make, was incredibly cheap to purchase, and no one would have batted an eye if you bought a good bit of it all at once. And one such person to make such a purchase is the topic of our discussion today, Lydia Struck. Lydia was a tailorist by trade with big, beautiful blue eyes, chestnut hair, and a milky complexion. And at the age of 17, married a man by the name of Edward Struck, who was almost 40 at the time. He was a widower, had 6 children from his previous marriage.
God damn, dude.
He married 17-year-old Lydia, putting a vast difference in their age. And Lydia would then go on to have 7 more children with Edward, making their total 13 all together.
Didn't people live to be like 40 years old at this time? Like, what?
But
the fuck are you guys doing?
But also keep in mind, infant death rates were very, like, you had a lot of kids because you expected to lose like 3 or 4
playing
along
the field.
the way.
I get it. Yeah.
Yeah.
And we are also living in remember, this is a time where, like, we're slowly transitioning into the modern age, and life expectancy is slowly going up, and people are living longer. Unlike like the early 1800s where people were just dying at the drop of a hat. But yeah, he would go on to have 7 children with Lydia, bringing a total of 13 children altogether. And with a wife and 13 children to support, Ed needed a damn job, as his previous one had been lost.
Jesus, yeah.
Luckily,
13 kids? I can't even afford to support a dog.
That was too real. Don't. It's too real for our day and age.
What the hell?
So, luckily, in 1857, New York was in the midst of redoing its entire police force, and Edward applied for a job as a beat cop. He was luckily given that job and for 6 years patrolled the streets of Manhattan. However, the job would not last, and after those 6 years, Edward would be let go from the force. A barroom brawl had broken out, and as the story goes, an enraged drunk with a pistol had been causing a huge problem inside a local hotel, and Ed was right outside the hotel when it all went down. And instead of intervening, because he's a cop, he apparently ran away.
He pieced out?
He pieced out. Now, it's also important to keep in mind that cops at this time didn't carry firearms. They only had a baton. They weren't allowed to carry pistols in the 1850s and 60s.
Crazy.
The story then continues that shortly afterward, another police officer would arrive and the whole thing would be brought to a close. No lives lost. However, after hearing of Edward's reaction, the police force immediately fired him, let him go, no investigation or anything. They were just pieced him out that day. Ed tells a different story, however. He says that he was not near the hotel at the time and had heard the commotion a few streets away and quickly made his way there, but by the time he arrived, another officer had already been on the scene and had de-escalated the situation, and he wasn't needed for it any longer. But no matter what the truth is, the end, he lost his job and sunk into what would become a very, very terrible depression. Something that, at the time, people didn't really have a diagnosis for. They just thought he was really sad.
I wonder which one he did, man. I wonder whether he actually ran away or not. That's crazy.
Well, yeah, so the details a little bit more go about like that there's believed that Ed had evidence on some of the higher ups in the police force that they were acting corrupt and they were just looking for any reason to get rid of him. But a lot of that comes from Ed's side of the story. But the fact that there was no investigation and they let him go, and what we'll learn about the captain a little bit later, leads me to believe that it's kind of up in the air, and each one seems plausible.
You think they were just kind of like, just quit, bitch. Like, get out of here. And
yeah, it's possible. It's possible. What were you going to say, Jesse?
No, I was going to say, usually the truth always lies somewhere in the middle.
Yeah.
So I feel like he probably pieced out, and they used that as an excuse to finally get rid of him because they were trying to for a while. Like, I feel like that's the middle.
It just seems like it's not that good of a reason to fire somebody, but
if you're looking for a reason to fire someone, that's a good one. So.
Yeah.
Well, he did still serve 6 years on the force, which is good. And so by the time he lost his job, his first 6 children had all grown old enough to leave the home and go live lives of their own. But at this point, it still left 6 other children, as their firstborn actually died at the age of 2 from intestinal illness, and Lydia and himself to care for. While Lydia on the surface had been a model housewife, caring for his children and him, cooking and cleaning, doing all the things an 1800s wife is expected to do, what Ed didn't know is that behind the veneer of goodliness lied something way scarier. Something we wouldn't define for quite some time yet: a psychopathic serial killer.
Whoa. Okay, wait. So hold on. So let me think about this. So 6 of his kids, the 6 kids that were Lydia's kids before, or his kids before.
His kids before, not Lydia's kids.
Yeah. His kids before were already out. So we're talking about a household with 6 like very young children.
6 younger children in it. Yep.
Okay, got it.
Yep. So Ed ended up spending a lot of time at home. He couldn't find work anywhere else, and the more he failed to find work, the more depressed he became. Eventually, he would not even leave the bed anymore, and apparently at one point took his own pistol into his mouth and was going to pull the trigger before being talked down by the family and Lydia and whatnot. And you know, to her credit, to the best we can, Lydia did seem like she was doing a lot to try and help. At one point, she even went to the police captain, hoping that she could convince them to take Ed back onto the force. And the captain had apparently already been trying to do that over the course of years and failing. The police force just would not hire him, no matter how hard the captain tried. Or at least that's what the captain told Lydia. Of course, we don't know if that's all true, if Lydia, did that. We do know that she went to the captain, however. His advice to Lydia, though, was simple. Ed needed to be put out of the way. What the captain said he meant in further testimonies at court at some point was that he meant an insane asylum. Go put him in an insane asylum. He'd clearly lost his mind. He was now a danger to himself and to others, and to keep him safe away from people, to go put him into an insane asylum. Lydia, however, took those words rather differently. After speaking to the captain, she went back home, scrounged about 10 cents from around the house, and then went to the local drugstore and bought 1 ounce of arsenic. Likely getting a bit more than an ounce, though, because it was actually known that drug dealers, pharmacists and whatnot, gave liberal amounts of arsenic because of how cheap it was and how easy it was to make. So she likely got more.
An ounce of arsenic for 10 cents?
For 10 cents. She got an ounce of arsenic from her local drugstore. In a bottle.
How much? Okay.
10 cents in 1862 money.
Yeah, which is like $0.00.
I'm trying to think of what it would be now. We'd have to do the conversions.
Probably like $10, right? Like something like that.
I imagine it's still pretty cheap. Yeah, like $10 to make to grab arsenic. So, yeah, she spent 10 cents on getting an ounce of arsenic. Now, mind you, only about 1 to 4 grains of arsenic is enough to kill a person, and she got a fucking ounce of it. This is also during a time where everything from cocaine, chloroform, morphine, and mercury were all easily sold over the counter and marketed as cure-alls of the era. Every single one of them was found in a cure-all of some sort, and you could just get the shit over the counter without an issue.
What? How many poisonings were happening at this time?
One would imagine a lot because people didn't know.
A fuck ton.
But also they didn't have the scientific and medical knowledge to be like, that's what killed them, right? Because if you're taking a cure-all, it's because you have a disease of some sort that you're trying to cure, and so they'd be like, well, they did have scarlet fever, so that's what got them.
So it's interesting because like they could tell, they knew arsenic was a poison. That was not something that was a shy away from. Arsenic poisoning did happen to people. However, from my understanding, only a few doctors could recognize the outward arsenic symptoms when you get
It's not like
poison.
Foaming at the mouth and your eyes.
No,
melt.
it's not.
Yeah.
We'll get into what those symptoms are. And the only way they could definitely be sure is postmortems. They'd have to take the organs out. They'd have to send them away. It would be weeks before they heard back.
And a lot of people, especially during the early 1900s, late 1800s, and for most of human history, are like, don't desecrate the body or else he won't get into heaven. Like that's that's like the basic gist of it. And so you wouldn't let them do that. And only recently were people like, yeah, maybe we should find out who killed this person.
Yeah,
or how
just
they
do an
died.
autopsy, please. Like that would be great.
Yeah.
That's so crazy.
So it was really easy to do this shit and like just get away with it for untold amounts of time. And yeah, I wonder how many got away with it. I wonder how many doctors or nurses or people who just knew what the fuck arsenic did got away with it because they didn't, get lazy. However, our dear Lydia ended up buying that arsenic and heading home. Arriving home, Lydia set out to do exactly what the captain asked of her. Put Ed out of the way. He was in bed, as he always was when Lydia got home, and she fixed him up some oatmeal and using one of her sewing needles as a way to measure it, mixed in some arsenic, and then helped him get the entire bowl down. Throughout the night, she would continue to feed him mixed foods mixed with arsenic and drinks mixed with arsenic as well. And in her mind, she told herself she was believing to do him a favor, releasing him from his misery while simultaneously lessening her stress and her workload at home. Myths about female serial killers and poisoning being the humane way to go end up being the actual opposite, where a lot of the atrocities of Bundy and Dahmer and all that stuff get, a lot of headline because it was very grotesque what they did with the bodies afterward, especially Dahmer and like John Wayne Gacy and the like.
Right.
Their killing methods were quick, almost always. Maybe Bundy,
shot in the head,
but usually shot in the head, slashed in the throat, choked. A lot of those serial killers are what is called product killers. They want the body. They don't want to deal with the killing itself. Arsenic, however, works.
What a bizarre ass way to phrase. Like, I get it, but it's like creepy, right? Their product. They want the product. Like,
I mean,
yes,
they're
but
famous. They are categorized by their desire to
there's
murder people anyway. So
there's like 3 or 4 different categories of serial killers depending on what they're trying to do. And this shit, as we talk about this kind of thing, obviously, like we did with Tommy Patera, like dark gets dark.
Yeah,
it gets crazy. However, like I said, they comparatively to none of them are humane. There is no humane way to murder somebody. If you were to compare how arsenic kills you compared to a gunshot to the head, like the son of Sam, who's another serial killer who killed with a pistol, you would take a bullet to the head immediately. Because around 8 o'clock the next morning on May 24th, 1864, after an incredibly long night, Edward Struck finally died of excruciating pain, vomiting, retching, seizing, fever, diarrhea, and all the while, Lydia sat by his bedside, quote-unquote, tending to him the entire night, knowing what she was doing, and poisoned him throughout the entire night. When the physician showed up the next day, he declared it death by consumption.
That's that whole idea of like, well, he coughed up blood and then consumption got him. They don't know. They don't have the medical knowledge. So everything could have been like, yes, that's exactly, we know what it is. It's one of like 4 things. That's it. It's like, no.
Yeah. And if you think poisoning is humane, like think about getting food poisoning. Like, you don't die from it, but that sucks ass.
It's the way the media portrays a lot of female serial killers. If you think about, like, the female serial killer poisoning, you think of, like, a lady in a dress who elegantly moves from room to room and quiet. And when you think of Bundy and Gacy, you think of psychopaths who murder and torture and decapitate and all this other crazy stuff.
When I think of female serial killers, I think of Xenia Onatopp from James Bond, who crushed you with her thighs. That's what I think of.
I was going to say, I'll take it. I'll take it.
When's the Xenia Onatopp episode?
We need that.
That's episode 69.
That's Jesse's episode.
James Bond broke her back, unfortunately, but he took her out.
But it's a lot of the way the media portrays the two. The crazy male ones get prescribed crazy. Females get prescribed mean and evil. But they're both crazy. They're both psychopaths. They're both monsters at heart. Psychopathic serial killers are very shallow people. They're able to put on personas of somebody with emotion, but really they live to satisfy their inner desire to kill, which is their driving force.
It's almost creepier to me, the poisoning, because you're kind of like doing you're like doing an experiment. Like you're kind of like watching something happen that you did and seeing what happened.
When you're talking experiments, that's something we'll talk about Jane Toppan in the next episode. She loved to experiment with different poisons and poison combinations just to see what they did to the person. But that's for later. Yeah. However, and if they didn't know what it was, like Jesse was saying, consumption or whatever, they would call it illness of the X. Illness of the intestines, illness of the stomach, illness of the head. If they didn't know what killed them or they didn't think they knew what killed them, they would label it on the death certificate just an illness of a type they didn't understand. But Let's fast forward time briefly. Do we all remember 1994 and Susan Smith, the lady who had her car with her 2 kids?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Oh
Yep.
my God.
And how insane, how like that was crazy. That she even was able to do that to her 2 children, and you know what kind of crazy.
Do we know? Because that's happened. That's happened since, where people would like drown their like a woman would drown her kids in the tub or something.
Yeah,
like that,
I remember that one too. That was another one.
I can't think. Like they keep saying it's sort of like a depression, or something that like.
They always justify it to themselves in a way that she was saving her 2 kids from becoming crazy or whatnot.
Yeah, I don't. But it's always. I don't think even doctors today know why stuff like that happens.
Yeah,
that's reasoning. I'm like, is that how that works? Like, I truly don't know. And it's dark, but also very fascinating, because the idea that a parent could do that to their own kids is like something is seriously wrong, and there is no scientific explanation that I can see.
Yeah, other than just psychopathy. You know,
I have no clue.
Yeah,
I guess
a psychotic break, you know, like whatever.
So, yeah, for those who don't know, 94, a woman by the name of Susan Smith had her 2 kids in the car, and she drove the car off the ledge and watched on the shore as the car, for 5 minutes she watched as the car sank slowly with her children.
Drown in a fucking car, dude. Ugh.
And that shit is horrific, and still goddamn is. That's horrible. However, 130 years before that, Lydia would do the same. However, not to 2 children, but to all fucking 6 of them.
Oh my God.
With the first kill firmly under her belt, it's as though the floodgates opened in Lydia's mind, and her true desire for killing was all she lived for from that point onward. Just 1 month after killing her husband, she started to feel the same worthlessness in her kids that she saw in her husband, who had just been lying in bed and become a bother to her, not earning any money for the house and basically, you know, putting them into financial despair. Particularly that of her youngest, 6-year-old Martha Ann, 4-year-old Ed Jr., and baby William, who was no more than a few months old, since they could, as she put it, in her own words, they could do nothing for me or for themselves. But Lydia didn't want to act rashly. She wanted to be sure that killing them was the right call, so in her confession at court, she said she thought it over for a few days first. She put some time into thinking about whether killing them was the right thing to do, and eventually came to the conclusion that they all had to die.
What the
that's
she just turned into a cyborg and like decided like,
again, that's a lot of psychopathy is not the right, like, psychopathy is a thing, but that's not the word I'm looking for.
There's clearly a technical
sociopath.
word.
It's sociopath. Yeah, a sociopath who, and this is an actual thing that exists, that there are, because sociopathy does not mean that you're an evil serial killer. Let me put that out there. There are good sociopaths out there. But sociopathy is the inability to feel emotion towards someone else.
Well, it's just a lack. It's a lack of empathy. It's the idea that you do not see others as worthy of your emotions, because the only person you're focusing on is yourself. And it's like to everyone else, it's like they're like pieces in a game of your own like life. Like, you're the most important person, and everyone else just exists to either get something from or use in some way.
I hear that like 1 in 10 people is a sociopath.
I believe that, especially nowadays. I believe that.
It takes a very, very specific mix to make a sociopath a serial killer.
Right. It's totally. I mean, they're different things. Like just in the way that a non-sociopath can be a serial killer, a sociopath can, and you know, it helps that they don't have empathy.
Right. That's something to keep in mind for Lydia here, because very much everything she does is about betterment of how she perceives her life, and wanting to make her life better by removing the things that are in her way.
Mm-hmm. And if you don't see people as people with their own lives and like existences, you just see them as like things in your way to being better. That's a sociopathic thing. A lot of I believe the stat is like almost every CEO or the people on the boards of every corporation, those are sociopaths.
Because you have to step on people to get to that high.
Yeah. Like the most powerful people in the world usually are sociopaths. I believe they said like it also is a presidential thing too. Like a lot of presidents and world leaders are sociopaths, even though they're like, I promise you I'm going to do everything. At the end of the day, they had to like break a few backs to step on their way up to the top.
Of course. And that's something important too to keep in mind of serial killers. Like, think about Ted Bundy. He got all of his victims by putting on a face of caring and being friendly and luring them into a false sense of security. And when he got them away, that all disappeared, and he was able to be who he truly was.
Yeah.
Anyway, furthering on with that, like I said, she thought it over for a few days before she decided. You know, I imagine she sat in her room, read a book, had some tea. Is killing my children the best way to go? And she decided that it was
crazy.
The way to go.
That's
it is. It's fucking insane. Like, I can't imagine sitting in my office and being like, my family's kind of a pain. They're in my way. I could kill them, but let me think it for about a couple nights. Let me sleep on it first. And then waking up 2 days later, hey, you know what? I'll kill him.
It's like moving to Austin by yourself. It's like the same idea. It's like,
I don't know. I mean, it's like really.
It's a good opportunity.
You know what? I'm just gonna take the chance. I'm just gonna take the chance.
Yeah.
Let's do it. What's the worst that could happen? What's the worst that could happen? So, after thinking it over, in the first week of July, she poisoned all 3 of them, killing all of them. Her confessions at the time show a true psychopath, emotionless, and speaking in terms that were clear that she only cared about herself. When she spoke of Ed Jr.'s death, who was the middle child in the 3 that ended up dying in that first week, she said the following. Jesse or Alex, you're welcome to read her confession in the most old-timey female way that you can.
Ooh.
Anybody? You want me to do it?
I'll old-timey female read this.
Okay.
Do this.
In the evening, Edward died. He was a beautiful boy, and he did not complain during his illness. He was very patient. The afternoon before he died, my stepdaughter, Gertrude Thompson, came in to see my children and spoke to him and said, "Eddie, are you sick?" He said, "Yes." Then she said, "You will get better." And he said, "No, I shall not ever get well." The doctors had no suspicions in this case either, and I did not hear of anyone having any.
And that is verbatim what she said in court about how she just spoke of her son be dying patiently and being a beautiful boy.
The kid said, "No,
I shall never get well."
That's crazy to me.
Yeah. And Ed Jr. would die very shortly thereafter, and baby William would die a death in great agony even a few hours after Ed Jr.'s death. The doctors classified the deaths as remittent fever and bronchitis, respectively.
Shout out to bronchitis. I've had it. It is the worst.
It's bad.
It is an unpleasant experience.
I feel like I did have bronchitis when I was a teenager, and I don't remember.
I'm going to be real with you. Bronchitis is like an orgasm. If you've had one, you know.
Oh, then maybe I've
you
never
are
had
aware
bronchitis.
that you're aware that you went through that, because it is like the worst.
Yeah.
Breathing sucks.
Oh, God. So definitely. Then I haven't had bronchitis. Sweet. Hopefully I never will.
I just can't believe that, like, this is like the same. Anytime you hear a story like this where, like, somebody's killing their whole family, it's like everybody's like, "Oh my God, your husband died. That is so shitty.
Yep.
Oh my God, let me know if you need anything. Wow, now your son is dead. That is so crappy.
No, now your daughter and 2 sons are dead."
Oh, they died all at once too?
She poisoned them all in the first week of July.
3
she
of them.
knocked out the 3 youngest ones.
Yeah, she killed the 3 youngest because they were, in her words, like just sitting around doing nothing.
How is
which
that
is
not so
crazy.
suspicious?
Exactly. We're gonna because in this case specifically, there is a heaping dose of incompetence at play here, and we're gonna get to that in a minute. So like we were saying before, this all seems crazy that doctors continually classify these deaths incorrectly, but you also have to remember that at the time we were still discovering things.
Right.
We had no regulations. It was an era where we were still putting live leeches all over people's bodies because we thought it helped with damn near everything. Medicine was still very much in the dark ages in a lot of respects.
It's still kind of, I mean, leeches are...
Yeah, no, they definitely have a medicinal purpose,
Yeah.
but they don't cure a fever or
Right.
remove
Well,
the
I mean, now it's a
diseases.
different thing. It's like a holistic thing now, right?
Right, exactly.
Where, like, the thinning of the blood, you know, that kind of stuff.
Well, no, Kelly uses them at work on animals all the time.
Well, yeah, it helps in the blood, and like Jesse was saying, and it can help, like, stimulate blood flow. There are uses for them. They're just not, common practice anymore.
Well, it's one of those things where it's like, yes, we could bring leeches, or a doctor could just take a needle and suck, like, blood out of you.
Yeah, a computer's like, beep, boop, boop, and then it, like, did the same thing. Yeah, I know.
Yeah.
But at this time, medicine was still primitive, and besides, Lydia only killed them because they were useless. Let's keep that in mind.
Oh, yeah.
Unlike her 14-year-old boy, George, who had gotten himself a job as a painter for $2.50 a week. He was contributing, and as long as he was contributing, he wasn't a burden.
Work hard, George. Work your fucking ass off, kid.
Please, George, don't ever stop. Oh, no. George has painter's colic.
No!
Painter's colic is an intestinal colic associated with the obstinate constipation due to chronic lead poisoning.
Oh, that's right, because paint had
Was
lead
all
up until
fucking
like
filled with lead.
Damn.
the 70s.
Yeah,
Cool.
like
All right,
lead
yeah.
was in everything, and he eventually got that.
You know
And
what?
he was
Shout out to all the
60s.
kids listening. You got it real good, yes.
Don't eat paint chips, lead paint. Like, that was a worry still when I was growing up.
Yeah, like you got it real. You are living high and mighty on the hog, my friend. Because 20 years, 30 years ago, shit was not the
Let
same.
me tell you
It's like-
about asbestos. That
Oh,
shit is
boy.
everywhere. It still
Don't
is.
worry. I was going to say, don't worry. Asbestos is coming back if the regulations have gone through.
Can't wait for a new dawning.
But I
of
remember living in
asbestos.
my parents' house in the 90s. Lead wasn't in paint anymore, but we were in an older house. So all the paint in the house almost positively had lead. And the amount of times the parents were like, don't eat the paint, don't eat the paint, don't eat the paint, as they slowly kind of fix the house over time.
Here's the good news, kids. The pipes that are underground, that shit was from the 50s. Good
Yup.
luck, everyone.
The 1860s are fucked up, man.
The
You're
1860s are wild.
You're working, you get poisoned at work, and because you got poisoned at work, you ended up at home where your mom poisoned you to death.
Yeah. Well, hey, to be fair to Lydia, she gave her son a whole week to recuperate before she
thank
got
God.
discouraged and frustrated and thought he would. This is the best part. She didn't kill him off because he was a burden. She was now killing him off because he was potentially going to become a burden, in her words.
That's very generous.
And now you can see something else that you see a lot in serial killers. Serial killers always give themselves little allowances until the deed is done. And then once those gates are open, they look for any excuse to do it, as long as they get to kill again.
Like, if you watch any sort of TV drama about murder or whatever, they always are like, once someone kills once, you have to stop them or else they're going to do it more and more and more and more and more, to the point where they're like, come catch me. Like, someone
and they
try
there's
and stop
so many,
me.
That's
like
the Zodiac right there, to a T.
Yeah.
Yeah, and there are a bunch of killers who ended up getting caught because they did that. They got almost getting caught becomes part of the game for them.
Right, because they can get away with it so much and they keep doing it, and they're like, this is too easy.
Yeah, like
no
come
one's
on,
gonna stop.
I'm better than you. It's a lot of like putting themselves above the world.
Yeah.
So anyway, her son might have become a burden after a week of dealing with painter's colic. So she mixed arsenic into her son's tea and killed him.
Damn.
Real.
The local physician that had been coming by the way, over the one who has been putting the deaths on, labeling the deaths of all her family, was a physician by the name of L. Rosenstein. He had become quite acquainted with Lydia and her family from all the death.
More like El Blosenstein.
Well, Rosenstein is going to be a big reason she gets to keep doing what she does. He continually saw Lydia at her family's bedside, tirelessly caring for the family, always worried about their health, and was very impressed with her work for tending to her family. And so after her son's death, he offered her a job as a full-time nurse.
Bullshit.
Oh my
Are you
God.
kidding me?
Not
Wait,
kidding.
Oh my
wait.
God.
At all.
This dude sees her and is like,
Constantly.
well, everyone in your family keeps dying and you're fine and you're constantly watching over them. You know what? You have all the qualities of a good
Literally
nurse.
every patient in her care has died. How is that going to be a good nurse?
Time out. How old
This
is
is where
Lydia?
the incompetence
How old
comes
is
in.
Lydia at this point?
So Lydia married, what's his
years
face? So Lydia married, 1857 is when she married, and she was 17 years old.
Okay.
And this is in 1864. So she's in her 20s.
It's like 22.
She was 17.
Well, all right. Time out. Let's go back. Lydia was a tailorist by trade with big blue eyes, chestnut hair, and milky complexion.
25 years old.
So she's like, fine. I'm gonna say,
Hot for the 60s.
I'm gonna say, as a man, this dude L. Rosenstein came up in there like he wasn't paying attention to those kids. He just saw this woman who was like, "Oh, I'm caring for my children, and look at my butt. Like, oh, you see my ankle?" And he was like, "Yo, you want to be a nurse?" This dude was trying to bone down, and he didn't see all the murders happening in front of his face. Oh,
no, man, he was just really impressed that she would stay up all night with these people and
That's
take care
bullshit.
of them and
This guy
feed
just was
them.
trying to get some of that 22. He's like, oh, well, my wife is 28 and that's far too old for me. So he saw a 22-year-old and was like, I'm in.
I mean, you might be right, because his incompetence is a lot of the reason that she got to continue on. And in the summer of 1864, Lydia, a medical expert in murder, became a full-time nurse.
Ridiculous.
In the 1860s.
How do you even track? How do you even track those deaths?
When she's a nurse?
Yeah.
You don't. So we actually don't know much
What?
about her profession as a nurse. We actually don't know much about what happened during her time as a professional nurse. But it's very possible, and hell, even probable, that she killed people under Rosenstein's watch as a nurse. It's people assume she did, but we don't have enough records showing what she was doing during that time.
I can't believe that.
Because she wasn't put on trial for murders she did while she was a nurse. And we'll see why. But Lydia still had 2 children to take care of before we're through with her time. This is not the ending. She goes and becomes a nurse and then everything's well. She still had a couple more children. An 18-year-old daughter named Lydia as well. And a 12-year-old named Anne Eliza, who Lydia described as the happiest child I ever saw.
How the hell is she gonna justify this?
Younger Lydia was a good, attractive, and hardworking girl who worked at a general store as a clerk and was being courted by a man named John Smith. Of course he was.
Yeah, before he
This is
time
an
traveled
18-year-old
and met Pocahontas, it all makes sense.
Yeah.
Exactly.
This guy was voiced by Mel Gibson.
However, the year of this particular year, I believe we're in 1866 now, had a particularly rough winter. And it was especially bad for Anne Eliza, the 12-year-old, as she had fallen ill on and off throughout the entirety of the winter. And since Lydia was a full-time nurse, it fell to the younger Lydia to care for her, which meant giving up her job as a store clerk. And so, in older Lydia's, the mom's own words, she once again became, quote, downhearted and discouraged. And still had the bottle of arsenic she had bought in that spring, in this previous spring, over half full.
Whoa, so time out. It's only been a year?
Yeah, man.
And her whole family has died except for these 2 girls.
Yes.
And ain't nobody being like, well, that's suspicious.
Before the 2 girls, it was only a month. Before
Yeah.
the 2 girls, it was only a month.
When she started, it was fast. All of this is happening between... So the final death, it basically was like a year event. 1864, she becomes a nurse. 2 years later, the killings begin again. Likely she was killing while she was a nurse. So
that is
Lydia,
so crazy.
I know, dude. It's insane. She becomes downhearted and discouraged, and still had like I said, the bottle of arsenic in her drawer that she bought that spring a couple years back, still half full. She went home after going to the drugstore to buy a cure-all medicine that she bought for Anne Eliza, and mixed in some arsenic with that medicine and began to medicate the young girl. This time, however, it wasn't an overnight death. This one took 4 days for young Anne to die a violent, excruciating death that would be labeled death from typhoid fever.
That's like
in the world.
That's rude as shit to buy a cure-all and then put the thing
and
that's
then
gonna kill her
poison the
in
shit
it.
out of it.
Yeah, that's like
That's cold. Yeah.
yeah.
Ice cold.
It's strange, man. Thereafter, younger Lydia and her mother lived together until in 1866. So that was all in 1864. I apologize. Yeah, that was all 1864.
Yeah.
Then 1866, younger Lydia got sick, and her mother did what was expected of by now. Medicated her daughter until she died the morning of May 19th, 1866. However, it is important to note that Lydia does claim that younger Lydia died of natural causes.
She's like,
even in
that
court.
one wasn't me.
Yeah. She copped to the death of the rest of her family, but she did not cop to the death of this one. Now, obviously, it's debatable because a lot of the signs of this Lydia's death are equal or equivalent to the ones of the other ones. But the fact that she's not claiming this one and claimed everything else might be weird. But I don't know. You know, we'll never know. It doesn't fucking matter at this point.
That
It
is
just
so
sucks
bizarre.
that she did it. While the doctors seemed to be oblivious to everything that was happening, as everyone around Lydia was dying.
Because she was gorgeous, and they were all trying to get some. Let's remember this.
I mean, yeah, maybe.
Let's remember this.
They wanted to get that 1860s poon.
I know.
Got it.
Who doesn't?
God.
1860s? I'm out, dude. I'm gonna get. I'm picking
That shit
something up from that.
That's the 1860s stank going on.
That's the 1860s promise: is you're gonna get an STD of some kind, no matter what.
And a little arsenic if it's Lydia. So as everyone around Lydia was dying, except for Lydia herself, not everyone was fully in belief that this was what was going on. A reverend named Payson and
there you
Lydia's...
go. See, the one guy not trying to get laid is the guy who's like,
the guy's already married to somebody much more powerful.
Yeah, God. And Lydia's older stepson, Cornelius Struck.
As well as the cast of the Chilluminati podcast.
we weirdly were suspicious of her. I wonder what she looked like. I bet you there's pictures out there.
Look, the way they describe her is the way they describe all, like, throughout old-timey writing. What a weird thing to say, but throughout period writing of that piece, every time someone describes as, like, milky skin, like, all that BS is just their code word saying, like, that's a fine white woman. That's literally what they're saying.
I'm imagining Nicole Kidman in The Others. That's where my head's at.
There you go.
Yeah.
So Cornelius Struck specifically would end up going to the District Attorney Gavin, and urge him to exhume the corpses of his now dead family to figure out what the hell was going on and if Lydia had been poisoning with arsenic. Lydia, however, was far from done. Free of her family, she finally claimed to be living a life that felt good and free, in her own words.
Wow.
Eventually, free of her family, Lydia found herself taking care of an elderly man who had recently lost his wife, called Mr. Hurlburt, a few towns away, outside of New York.
Can we just take a second to talk about Mr. Hurlburt?
Mr. Hurlburt,
the guy with the worst name of all time.
Yeah.
It's like you want to. It's like, how do I make a name sound like a fart without making it sound like onomatopoeia? Mr. Hurlburt.
Oh, God.
If you listen to this podcast and your last name is Hurlburt,
what does Mr. Hurlburt look like to you?
He's the guy. He's Harry Potter's stepdad or whatever that guy is.
I was thinking of the dude from Pocahontas who's like not John Smith.
Exactly. But same. We all know who we're talking about.
You're talking about Dursley.
Yeah, we're all talking about a Dursley-like figure. There's only you are not showing up looking fine if your name is Hurlburt. That's just a fact.
Hurlburt.
Well, good old Mr. Hurlburt here was a recent widower. He had a large piece of land, and he was relatively well off for the 1860s. And eventually, the two were married. Mere days after she had started living with him as a live-in aide, they had fallen in love with each other, and they married one another. They got married in one of his brother's houses or something. It was like a shotgun wedding. It was very kind of quick. And for over a year on the outside, it always appeared as though Lydia truly cared for the man. But it's important to note that one of the promises Mr. Hurlburt made to Lydia about marrying her was that if Lydia married him, he would will everything he ever owned.
Instantly killed. Instantly dead. Instantly kills him.
So they got married, and they lived, like I said, for over a year, married in their homestead. And
she gave him a year.
She gave him a year.
He probably was the entire time just like, should I?
Yeah, I know, she was thinking it over. Dinner was always ready on the table when he came home from his excursions into the city. She doted on him, took care of him, and took care of the house near perfectly, and even shaved his face for him as his hands trembled too much for him to shave his own face. The neighbors even truly thought they had something special. They always kissed and had a good time, and outward appearances were very, very flattering for the two of them. But one day, during a routine shave, Mr. Hurlburt got rather dizzy and walked away trying to feel better, and then eventually came back for the shave and then got even sicker and quickly fell into a sickness. And what does Lydia do when someone she's friends with, family with, married with, what does she do when someone becomes, quote, useless and feeble?
Oh my God.
She fixed him a food, drink, and some medicine with her favorite ingredient, arsenic. And shortly thereafter, in 1868, Lydia had suddenly inherited $20,000 worth of 1860s land and $10,000 worth of 1860s cash.
It's like 1 million ounces of arsenic you could buy with that.
She could just load the walls with arsenic. Poor Mr. Hurlburt fucking kicked it. She couldn't even See, I thought when I was reading the story, she was going to slit the throat. I'm like, oh God, here it comes. Like,
with the shaving razor?
Constantly talk about the shaving and the razor, and 1860s shaving is fucking scary. I'm good. But no, she just, her own standby, killed him with arsenic.
She's like, look, these doctors aren't figuring this shit out. I'm just going to keep doing this. Mm-hmm. That's crazy.
But before we get to the end of Dear Lydia, there's still a little bit more to be done.
God damn.
In 1870, Lydia would marry one more time.
2 years later.
And acquire the name that stuck with her until this day, Lydia Sherman. She married another widower who was desperate for a new wife to help take care of the home and his children. Horatio Sherman was a hardworking factory man, full of charm, full of charisma.
Much better name than Mr. Hurlburt. Yeah.
Yes, agreed. And according to friends and people who know him, had quite an affinity for the bottle.
My man.
He was $300 in debt, but Lydia quickly found herself enjoying his company and eventually married him.
There are a lot of people out there who are like, I'd kill to be $300 in debt.
Yeah, no shit.
I would poison with arsenic to be $300 in debt.
If there was a shot that I could live through it, I would take that bet. And they would be married very shortly after, much similar to Mr. Hurlburt, in his brother's home, and began to enjoy their life together. 2 months after the marriage, Lydia killed his 4-month-old child with arsenic.
Jesus. Lydia, calm it down. Shit.
The month following, she killed 14-year-old Ada, his other child. She fell ill while helping to decorate the local church for Christmas, and when she went home, Lydia did as she always does and laced everything she gave the poor girl with arsenic. And at this point, if it isn't clear, literally all this Lydia looks for is an excuse. She just needs an excuse.
As soon as somebody's sick, she's like, oh shit.
As soon as somebody's sick, she's out. Feeble and old, out. It doesn't matter.
There's no guarantee that any of these people were ever sick.
Right. Or didn't have a sickness that wouldn't have gone away in a few weeks if they just stuck it out.
Well, all I'm saying is there's no reason why she needed to play by that rule. She could just be like, oh well, she got sick, so I killed her.
My personal theory is she probably played by that rule because it was a way of justifying it to herself.
Yeah.
It was her way of saying, oh, I'm doing them a favor.
But if you give them a little arsenic, don't they just get a little sick and then...
Well, yeah, if she did do that a lot, where some of the times she would only give them a little arsenic over the course of many, many days to try and just extend the torture. And she would watch the entire time, always by their bedside, watching what she was doing to them. And I'm sure enjoying it to a degree. But it would be days before poor little Ada would actually succumb to the poisoning, dying on New Year's Eve. And she started being poisoned prior to Christmas. So you're looking at a week.
Do you think she also, just trying to get into the mind of a killer, do you think she also liked the idea that everyone saw her as the doting mother who was always watching over them, and she got off on the fact that people were like, you're so kind to look after all these kids.
What's it called? Munchausen? What's the thing? You keep someone sick. It's like the thing from The Sixth Sense where you
oh, I don't know.
You keep someone sick so that you can take care of them.
Sure.
Yeah. I'm sure that it exists. It might be Munchausen's. I've heard of Munchausen's. I just don't remember what it is.
Yeah, it's something like that.
But no, without a doubt. There is no doubt in my mind she was having some sort of savior complex happening or to a degree, that even though she never saved them, she killed them almost always. People always saw her as the loving, caring figure that was by their bedside every step of the way.
Oh, no. Munchausen's is the one where you act like you're sick or have a mental illness, but you don't because you like the attention that it gets you for, you constantly believe that you're sick. I'll try and find out what the other one is that,
Yeah. Well, we're coming towards the end of Lydia's story, so while you research...
Munchausen by proxy, maybe?
Yeah. It's induced illness by, carers.
There you go.
So the people that take care of them are like, you're sick and I need to take care of you. But really, they're the ones making them sick. Yeah.
Yeah, there you go. So, as I imagine it would happen to any of us, the loss of his 2 children sent Horatio into a severe spiral of depression.
How was he not you did this? Every single kid that you've ever had died.
Yeah, good question. Be you don't know. Eventually, he ended up grabbing a bunch of his, as the book put it, cronies, and left town.
Cronies?
Yeah, he grabbed a bunch of his cronies. But he was just a drunk. He was a drunk factory worker that he just loved drinking. And the loss of his 2 children shoved him even further down that route. Eventually, though, after a few weeks, he would be returned by his eldest son, by his previous marriage, Nelson, who was paid to go actually and find him by none other than Lydia. Lydia actually gave Nelson money to go find his father and bring him back home. And he succeeded. He found his father. Actually, what he says in the book is he found his father living a life amongst lowlives, aka, I'm sure, homeless, drinking, that kind of thing, gambling, etc., etc.
Crazy.
Upon returning, he was almost immediately poisoned by Lydia.
Lydia.
She paid Nelson to bring him home so that she could just kill him. That's what she did. And the man who would finally bring an end to her terror would arrive in a man by the name of Dr. Beardsley.
Beardsley. The beard is in the name. The dude came in and he was like, I got this.
He would tend to Horatio and actually see him start to get better, only to discover that every time he would come back, he had gotten worse somehow. And it didn't make any sense. And that each time he would come to tend to him, nothing he did would work. In fact, he would continually get worse. As the symptoms were described to him, he realized it bore all the signs of arsenic poisoning. And luckily, Dr. Beardsley knew the outward signs of arsenic poisoning. Yeah. Horatio was far too gone, however, when he realized that this is what was happening to Horatio. And Horatio died on May 12th, 1871. After his death, a post-mortem was ordered by Dr. Beardsley under some massive suspicion. It was found his liver was, quote, absolutely saturated with arsenic.
Insanity.
The other bodies, the bodies that were exhumed, by the way, from his family by the son after she ran off, also found the exact same thing. Arsenic in almost all of them. Fearing the law had been closing in, Lydia ran. But she wouldn't last long as she ran to New Jersey and the cops had been alerted there in New Jersey and she would be arrested. The other family members who were exhumed had been found the exact same cause of death, arsenic poisoning, and after the trial, Lydia was thrown into prison for life. Would have been a hanging if she was a man, however, because she was a woman, and the whole general public, at this point, mind you, the general public had been whipped into a frenzy. After she had been caught and realized what was going on, much like we see today, the newspapers were laced with just articles about this mysterious female killer, tons of straight lies in the newspapers of the killings she's done and just made it up to make it more sensational, so that when the people actually saw her, they were literally surprised by how plain and boring she looked.
Because they thought she was just like, a demon or something?
Yeah, like a demon or some like exotic beauty. But she was just a normal woman. And that was even more fascinating to the people. However, Lydia's reign of terror did come to an end in 1871. And she lived a rather incredible life of killing. She killed, admitted to 12, I think was the number in the end. Maybe a little bit more. But we will never know how many people she killed.
All of those people who died under her care at that hospital should have their bodies exhumed.
Yeah, I know, right?
That is so insane. I mean, I guess it doesn't matter now, but damn.
While this is insane, next week's topic, Jane Toppan, the Angel of Death, she killed so many people.
She's fucked up. I've heard a little bit about her before. That is like next level of this.
She killed so many people that she couldn't even remember the details of some of them anymore, and it is believed that she killed well over 100.
That's insane. It's insanity.
I wanted to tell the story.
What was Tommy Patera's body count?
Believe he admitted to around 18 of them, but he talked about well over 60.
Damn.
Yeah. But again, a lot of his, and if you think about it, a lot of the reason he was caught is because he had to do something with the fucking bodies, right?
Right.
And the reason he was caught, they had to go dig up the bodies for evidence. When you're a nurse in the 1860s murdering people, the bodies take care of themselves.
Yeah, you're just like,
the hospital takes care of it.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's nuts. But I wanted to talk about Lydia and a little bit kind of lay the groundwork for the 1860s for Jane Toppan because of how insane the Jane Toppan story fucking is.
Is it the same time?
A little after, like about a decade later.
Okay.
But in between, honestly, there was another killer I wanted to talk about, but I don't want to talk about all three. There's another female serial killer that takes place just after her, who was also a nurse. However, her shtick was that she claimed to have premonitions of the people dying before they died.
Oh boy.
She would have, and every fucking person believed her. She'd get a chill like while eating dinner, and she'd be like, "Oh, I believe your brother's gonna get ill and never get better." And then, oh surprise, a week later he was dying from fucking arsenic poisoning.
How did she even? That's like some like baby.
She got super cocky. She got very cocky towards the end of her killing spree. She like was doing shit like just feeding the local neighborhood dog poisoning because she was annoyed with it, and everybody in town knew she didn't like the dog, and she was the only one that didn't like the dog. And she suddenly had a premonition that the dog was gonna die, and then oh surprise, the dog died. Like that was her, kind of like her end of the story.
That is insane to me.
Yeah, man. It's crazy. So that's Lydia. That's a very quick sum up of Lydia and her life.
Seems so obvious when somebody's poisoning a shitload of people. I don't get it.
And that's the thing about this particular story too, is that the first doctor, Rosenstein, first maybe 1 or 2 deaths, I give him a little leeway because again, 1860s,
right?
Doesn't really matter. Like he didn't know. Once the whole family is dead and like Lydia's alive.
But also there's the idea of proper training and medical protocol, and none of that really existed at the time period.
Yeah.
Like
I mean, you're not wrong.
Didn't.
That's something else we'll definitely talk about in the next episode. With nurse training lasted like 2 years most.
Like there's a I need to watch it. I've only seen the first 2 episodes, but I should finish it because it was great. During this time period as well is when like pathologies and profiling and all that was coming. So like shout out to TNT for their show The Alienist.
I've only seen looks cool. Yeah.
I've only seen 2 episodes so far. I need to finish it. It's like Dakota Fanning and Luke Evans and Dan Brule and like literally just it's about the first people to really like actually try to figure out why serial killers and why killers did what they did. And I think that's fascinating and I think that's set in like 1880. So, it's one of those things that even at that time they had no idea. They didn't even try to figure out why killers did what they did. They just assumed like they've got bad spirits in their brain cavity. Yeah. Like no one knew. Yeah. No one had a clue.
There's also that Clive Owen show about medicine, like around like in the turn of the 19th century, 20th century.
Mm-hmm. Medicine is wild, man. That's if anything, reading this book refreshed my memory of like history class. Of they just had no idea what they were doing.
I can't believe they didn't suspect something from this lady. I can't believe it.
From everything that I was reading, like they should have.
How is it just
at least the first few deaths?
Yeah. Oh my god.
Right.
Like they should have suspected something was going on after all the family started dying. But
so what else is there besides engorged liver? Is there anything else?
Well, it's the outward appearance is just like tightening of the throat, incredible abdominal pains, constant vomiting and to the point you're vomiting blood, diarrhea. There's nothing they could do about the pain either. Even morphine wouldn't work because arsenic just fucking rips you apart from the inside.
That is awful.
Yeah, it is an excruciating, long, painful, one of the worst ways in the world to die. And that's Lydia.
Oh my god!
And that's today's episode.
Oh,
happy notes.
I'm gonna go drink some whiskey. Holy shit!
Yeah. What fascinates me too about a lot of these stories of these bigger serial killers is just like all of the coincidences that have to happen. Like Rosenstein had to not suspect her, bring her on as a nurse,
or he's just trying to get it in. You know what I mean?
But I was saying she had to have a physician that would either saw her as either an asset.
He blew it. Yeah, he totally.
Or he blew it. And like that one could have been the turning point right then and there, but it wasn't because like he wanted to get his dick wet or whatever it was.
As much as I love that theory, I feel like he's just probably wasn't a great doctor.
Yeah, he probably wasn't a great doctor.
But he also wanted to get some.
And you have to also keep in mind too, this is also an age where door-to-door doctors took on so many patients, so they only were in the house for a few minutes, quickly prescribed something, and then they had somewhere else to go. It wasn't like you could go to a doctor's office and then, spend however long they deemed you needed. House call doctors were in and out. But that's the episode. Thank you guys so much for listening. I hope you boys enjoyed the episode. Things are going to get a little darker in the next one.
Ride.
Cool.
Holy shit.
Yeah,
a
little darker in the next one. Jane Toppan's early life is really funny. So I think we're going to have a lot of fun talking about what it was like for her to live with, basically as a live-in maid, and her life as that. how she may even was broken well before she started killing. But all that stuff is stuff to talk about next episode. So usual plugs as always. Hey, we have t-shirts, hats, and stickers, baby.
Get those sexy pieces of merchandise.
Yeti.com, I think /collections/Chilluminati. It's where you can get the Yeti stuff. The subreddit, as always, has been becoming more and more busy. If you want to talk about anything over there, stories you have, or talk about other stories people are telling, or have a suggestion, there's a suggestion thread. You can head over to the Chilluminati Pod subreddit, Chilluminati Pod for Twitter as well. Our personal Twitters are Jesse Cox for Jesse, Faciane A for Dear Old Alex, and Mathis Games for myself. Is there anything else I'm missing, gents?
I think that's it, dude.
I feel good.
All right.
I feel good. I gotta look up another crazy one for levity's sake.
Yeah, man. Bring on the crazy shit. We've got one more relatively heavy episode, and then we got some fun ghosty stuff coming up
Chinese
after that.
ghosts. Let's go.
Yeah, man. It's going to be great. But anyway, thank you guys so much for listening. We will return in a few weeks. Bye.
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 Pie. Good pie.